Officer Davenport, we need to talk.
Whoa. What's going on?
You know exactly what's going on. Evidence room logs. Your access card. 14 times in 2 months.
No. I was just...
Turn around. Hands behind your back.
My brother's name was Marcus Anthony Delgado, not overdose victim, not fentanyl casualty, not a statistic in the opioid crisis. Marcus, my brother, the one who used to make everyone at the table laugh without even trying, the one who called me on my birthday every single year, even the years when things were bad between us, even the years when I didn't pick up. He struggled. I won't pretend he didn't. Addiction is a war, and Marcus fought it harder than most people will ever know. He had been in treatment 3 times. He was trying. He was genuinely trying. And on a Tuesday afternoon in November, he walked into a gas station bathroom on Broad Street and used fentanyl that he bought from a street dealer. What neither of us knew, what neither of us could possibly have known, was that the drugs that killed my brother had been seized by the Providence Police Department 8 months earlier. They had been logged into evidence. They were supposed to have been destroyed. Instead, a police officer had signed them out of the evidence room, put them in his pocket, and sold them on the street for cash. A man with a badge, an oath, a gun. He sold my brother the poison that killed him, and then he went home. Gabriela Delgado went to the Providence Police Department 3 days after her brother's death and demanded to speak with a detective. She wanted to know who sold Marcus the drugs that killed him. What that investigation uncovered was not a single transaction. It was a 27-month operation run from inside the department itself. A decorated narcotics officer who had used his badge, his access card, and his knowledge of the evidence room's blind spots to steal nearly $400,000 worth of narcotics and sell them back into the very community he had sworn to protect. His name was Darnell Marcus Kendrick, 13-year veteran of the Providence Police Department, Narcotics Unit. 43 documented instances of evidence tampering. Over $380,000 in stolen drugs resold through a network of street-level dealers, one of whom sold fentanyl to Marcus Delgado on November 14, 2023. Marcus was pronounced dead at Rhode Island Hospital at 3:07 that afternoon. The fentanyl in his system was a 94.7% chemical match to a batch that Darnell Kendrick had signed out of the evidence room 19 days earlier. Darnell Kendrick was born in 1987 in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. His father was a machinist at a jewelry factory. His mother worked the front desk at a medical clinic. He grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment on Prospect Street. Not poor, but not comfortable. The kind of household where a broken washing machine meant 3 weeks of trips to the laundromat. He graduated from Tolman High School in 2005, enrolled at the Community College of Rhode Island for Criminal Justice, and told his parents he wanted to be a cop. In 2010, at 23 years old, he was accepted into the Providence Police Academy. He graduated in the top third of his class. His instructors noted he was detail-oriented with a strong aptitude for investigative procedures. That patience, that careful, methodical attention to detail, would later be used for something else entirely. His first assignment was patrol in the Olneyville neighborhood, one of the toughest beats in the city. High crime, open-air drug markets, the kind of place where a young officer either hardens quickly or burns out. Darnell didn't burn out. He made arrests. He built relationships with informants. He learned how the drug trade worked from the ground level. By 2014, he had been promoted to the narcotics unit. His supervisors considered it a reward. In reality, it was the beginning of the end. To understand what Darnell Kendrick did, you have to understand how police evidence rooms work, and more specifically, where they fail. When narcotics are seized, they're logged into evidence. Case number, description, chain of custody. Officers sign in and sign out. Everything is supposed to be tracked, but evidence rooms aren't banks. They're locked rooms in basements, managed by civilian clerks processing hundreds of items every week. And once a case is closed, the narcotics in that case are scheduled for destruction, supposed to be incinerated. The gap between scheduled and destroyed can be weeks, sometimes months. At the Providence Police Department, that gap had grown to over 18 months. The surveillance cameras in the evidence room had been broken for 14 months. Maintenance requests had been filed. Nothing had been done. Evidence logs were reviewed manually once a quarter. No automated system flagged unusual access patterns. Darnell Kendrick had spent years in the narcotics unit. He knew which cases were closed. He knew which evidence was sitting in the destruction queue. He knew when shift changes left the clerks distracted, and he had discovered something else. The broken cameras. The system that was supposed to catch dirty cops had failed completely before he ever walked through the door. The first theft occurred September 3, 2022. Darnell signed into the evidence room at 6:47 p.m. during the handoff between the day clerk and the night clerk. He logged in as retrieving evidence for case review. The case he pulled was a fentanyl bust from 7 months earlier. 4 defendants, all pleaded guilty, evidence scheduled for destruction in 2 weeks. He removed 14 grams of fentanyl from the evidence bag, resealed it. Logged out at 6:52 p.m., 5 minutes. That was all it took. The drugs were on the street by the following weekend. His distribution network wasn't complicated. He didn't run a crew or control territory. He simply had contacts, low-level dealers he had arrested over the years, informants he had cultivated, people who knew him as a cop and assumed that meant the product was reliable. He charged slightly below market rate, not so low it seemed suspicious, just low enough that buyers kept coming back. His first regular customer was a man named Terrence Bowl, a small-time dealer from the West End. Darnell had arrested him twice, never charged him. They had an understanding. Terrence didn't ask where the product came from. Darnell didn't ask where it went. Over the next 11 weeks, Darnell made 26 more trips to the evidence room. Fentanyl, oxycodone, cocaine, MDMA. He sold to at least 7 different buyers. He deposited the cash in amounts never exceeding $2,000, spread across 3 different bank accounts, always in different branches, always in person. For 11 weeks, no one suspected a thing. In hindsight, the warning signs were everywhere. Darnell's evidence room access was unusually high for an officer in his position. Most narcotics detectives signed in twice a month. Darnell was signing in twice a week. His access pattern showed a consistent preference for closed cases with narcotics approaching destruction dates. No other detective showed the same pattern. And then there were the lifestyle changes. April 2022, a new Dodge Charger. Cash, $38,000. July, a $45,000 down payment on a condo in Cranston. October, a long weekend in Miami, hotel on the beach. His base salary was $67,000 a year. His sergeant assumed family money. His colleagues assumed he was living beyond his means, like half the department. Internal Affairs had no reason to look at him. His file was clean. It would take a man dying in a gas station bathroom to change that. Marcus Delgado was 34 years old. He grew up in South Providence, dropped out of Central High School at 16, moved between jobs, construction, warehouse work, landscaping, nothing that stuck. His addiction began with painkillers after a car accident in 2018. Within a year, he had moved to heroin. Within 2, to fentanyl. He had been in and out of treatment 3 times. His mother had stopped speaking to him after he stole her television to pawn. His younger sister, Gabriella, still believed he could get clean. She was planning to visit him the following week. On November 14, 2023, Marcus bought a small quantity of fentanyl from Terrence Bowl. He used it in the bathroom of a Sunoco station on Broad Street at approximately 2:15 p.m. A customer found him unresponsive at 2:23. Paramedics arrived at 2:31. 3 doses of Narcan. It wasn't enough. Marcus Delgado was pronounced dead at Rhode Island Hospital at 3:07 p.m. He left behind a small baggie of fentanyl that would unravel a police officer's entire operation. In most overdose cases, the investigation ends with the death certificate. Resources are limited. Fentanyl deaths are common, but Gabriella Delgado refused to let it go. She showed up at the Providence Police Department 3 days after Marcus died and demanded to speak with a detective. She wanted to know who sold her brother the drugs that killed him. The case was assigned to Detective Meredith Santana, a 15-year veteran of the narcotics unit. Detective Santana ran the fentanyl recovered from the scene through the DEA's drug signature database. Every batch of fentanyl carries a chemical fingerprint, trace compounds, cutting agents, ratios that identify where the product originated. The results came back in 6 days. The fentanyl that killed Marcus Delgado matched a batch seized in a raid on Messer Street 8 months earlier. 4 defendants. All had pleaded guilty. The case was closed. The evidence was supposed to have been destroyed. Detective Santana pulled the evidence logs. The Messer Street fentanyl had been signed out for case review on October 26, 2023, 19 days before Marcus Delgado's death. The officer who signed it out, Darnell Kendrick. She didn't confront him immediately. She pulled every evidence log bearing his signature from the previous 2 years instead. 27 entries in 11 weeks, all closed cases, all narcotics in the destruction queue, a pattern so obvious she later said she couldn't believe no one had caught it. She brought her findings to Lieutenant Frank Camacho, head of Internal Affairs. State police were brought in to ensure independence. The audit took 9 days. When it was finished, 43 instances of evidence tampering or removal, fentanyl, oxycodone, cocaine, MDMA, estimated street value, $383,000. December 8, 2023. Darnell Kendrick was at his desk in the narcotics unit reviewing case files when Lieutenant Camacho walked down the hallway toward him. 2 state police officers followed. Darnell looked up, saw the internal affairs badge, saw the troopers. He knew. The body camera footage from that hallway was later played at his trial. "Officer Kendrick, we need to talk." His hand went up instinctively. "Whoa, what's going on?" "Evidence room, your access card, 27 entries in 11 weeks. I was logging seized property. That's part of my job." "Logging it or taking it home?" "I don't know what you're trying to say." "I'm saying Marcus Delgado is dead, fentanyl overdose, and the batch that killed him traces back to evidence you signed out 3 weeks ago." The footage shows Darnell's expression collapse, shoulders drop, eyes go to the floor. "I want a lawyer." Those were the last words he spoke to his colleagues. Investigators subpoenaed records from 3 banks. Between September 2022 and November 2023, Darnell had deposited $147,000 in cash, never more than $2,000 at a time, always different branches, always in person. His declared income for the same period, $71,400. The math wasn't close. Terrence Bowl was arrested December 12th. Faced with federal drug trafficking charges, he cooperated immediately. He described everything, the prices, the meeting locations, the arrangement. "I knew he was a cop," Terrence said in his recorded statement. "That's why I trusted him. I figured if a cop was selling it, it had to be clean." The drugs Terrence bought from a police officer were the same drugs police had seized from other dealers, the same drugs that were supposed to have been destroyed, the same drugs that killed Marcus Delgado. And then investigators found the phone, a prepaid Samsung purchased at a Walmart in Warwick. Darnell thought it was untraceable. He was wrong. Recovered from his condo during the search, the messages on it were unambiguous. Transaction after transaction, price negotiations, delivery confirmations. But one exchange stood out above all the others. From September 2023, weeks before Marcus Delgado died, Darnell warned a buyer to cut the product heavily because it was too potent to use straight. He knew how dangerous it was. He sold it anyway. Federal grand jury indictment. January 19th, 2024. 11 counts. Theft from a law enforcement evidence facility, distribution of controlled substances, conspiracy, money laundering, and the charge carrying the most weight, distribution of a controlled substance resulting in death. That count alone carried a mandatory minimum of 20 years. The trial began June 3rd, 2024. A DEA chemist testified the fentanyl in Marcus Delgado's system was a 94.7% chemical match to the Messer Street batch, the same batch Darnell signed out 19 days before Marcus died. Gabriela Delgado took the stand. "He wasn't just some addict," she told the jury. "He was my brother. He was trying to get clean, and this police officer sold him the poison that killed him." She looked directly at Darnell. "How do you sleep at night?" Darnell stared at the table. 6 hours of deliberation, guilty on all 11 counts. At sentencing, Judge Raymond Foster addressed him directly. "You took an oath to protect and serve. You were given access to a system built on trust, and you exploited that access to enrich yourself and poison your own community. The drugs you stole were seized to keep them off the streets. You put them back, and one of those people is dead because of your greed." 204 months in federal prison. 17 years. Badge confiscated. Pension forfeited. Name removed from the department's commendation wall. Eligible for release in 2041. He will be 54 years old. New surveillance systems installed in the evidence room. Access logs automated with real-time alerts for unusual patterns. The 18-month destruction backlog cleared. External audits scheduled quarterly. The reforms that should have existed years before Darnell Kendrick ever walked into that room for the first time. Defense attorneys across Rhode Island filed motions to review convictions in cases where Darnell had handled evidence. At least 12 cases came under active review. 3 convictions were already overturned. The ripple effects of one officer's betrayal will be felt for years. After the sentencing, a reporter asked me if 17 years was enough. I said no, it will never be enough. But I meant something different than what people probably heard. I didn't mean I wanted more time for Darnell Kendrick. I meant that no sentence, no verdict, no courtroom, no number of years gives me back the week I was planning to visit my brother. The phone calls I didn't answer. The version of Marcus I was still hoping for. He made mistakes. I know that. I've never pretended otherwise. Addiction is not simple, and Marcus was not simple. He was a whole person, a complicated, struggling, trying, real person. And the man who sold him those drugs knew exactly how dangerous they were. He said so himself in a text message. He warned someone else to be careful with it, and then he sold it anyway. He had an oath. He had a badge. He had access to a system that an entire community trusted. He used all of it to make money, and my brother paid for it with his life. Marcus Anthony Delgado, 1989 to 2023. His name is on a wall at a recovery center in South Providence now. I paid for the plaque myself. That's who he was. That's who he was supposed to keep becoming. And I will say his name for the rest of my life.